Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Duts. I'm your host Mains, and my colleague, wondering if he would jump off the Hell in a Cell for $500,000 to Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
I've been troubled the last few hours by a very, troubling thought. That's obviously what's trouble. Was Bingo the dog's name or the farmer's name?
I don't know.
Because
why are you singing? Have you been watching kids' TV today? Have you, by any chance?
No. It's because there was a farmer who had a dog,
and Bingo was his name.
Well, the farmer who had a dog's name was Bingo, or the farmer's dog's name was Bingo. These are things that occupy my mind.
See, I'm wondering how much money someone would have to give me to jump off the top of the Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania 32 in front of 100,000 people in Dallas without dying. I'm saying more than Shane McMahon got.
I think probably a lot of people I'd like to push off the top of a cell.
I've got a list. I've already got a list for said activity, but I don't think we can go on to that.
I think one of them might have played in Dallas last year.
I think most Dallas players would be on my list. So, but yeah, he definitely did, and is definitely not speaking his name. Dutton, a few things this week. 2 massive interviews. We got Chris Wessling, brilliant from around the NFL. Obviously, the GM of Common Sense is gonna bring us his common sense over to the UK. Talk us through some NFL stories. Then we've got Eric Galco from Optimum Scouting, and we're going to talk about drafting, Dutton. We're getting to that time of the year, and we're going to talk about an article he's written for Optimum Scouting where he has said what he would do as a GM for all the teams, which makes some very interesting reading and differs greatly from what everyone expects the teams to do. So we'll see what Eric thinks about that. We've obviously got Weird World, we always have, and we've got some really exciting news, Dutton, that we'd like to share with everyone.
We have been teasing at it, and if you like subtle hints, you might have picked it up.
If you like subtle hints, you probably aren't with us. So Dutton, we're now partnered with DraftKings, DraftKings.co.uk. We will be talking about them a lot over the next few weeks and months. We'll be talking through One Day Fantasy Sports. We will look at UK footy. We'll look at American footy and major sporting events. And Dutton, spring is upon us. The quote-unquote start of the summer of sport begins tomorrow, and that's with the Masters. And how would you like, Dutton, to win a share of $4 million?
I could live with it.
This is by playing one week fantasy golf. Enter the 1 week fantasy golf millionaire maker. The contest costs you $20 and the payout is $1 million for first place. All you got to do, Dutton, select 6 golfers you think will have the best tournament, and then follow it all on DraftKings. So you create your team from golfers playing in this week's tournament, obviously the Masters. You've got a budget of $50,000 on the 6 players, but obviously the better the player, the more expensive they'll be.
If, in case you're wondering, golf expert that we all know I am, my 6 is Day, Duffner, Johnson, Kissner, Nah, Walker. And
Dutton's done his, but your exclusive offer on behalf of DraftKings and Waxing Lyrical is deposit now for 100% bonus, additional cash of up to £400 and a free entry into a $3 contest. That's right, you get if you deposit anywhere up to £400, DraftKings will match. You get free entry into a $3 contest. Dutton, give me that team again.
Day, Duffner, Johnson, Kisner, Nah, Walker.
Love what you're doing there with Day. I would probably go Adam Scott as my main guy in the thing. I haven't picked a 6. I will do later. That's it, ladies and gents. Waxing Lyrical in association with DraftKings.co.uk.
Big time here.
I feel like I need some kind of cool music, but I haven't got it.
No.
So let's move swiftly on, and let's move on to Weird World. And Dutton, this is a classic one, and this is where we put the test of, do any of our do our partners listen to the show, or do friends of our partners listen to the show? As we're about to do an article that reads, "This robot has a strange, uncanny resemblance to Scarlett Johansson." Ricky Ma, 42, graphic designer in Hong Kong, and his robot, Mark 1, modelled after the famous Hollywood star who he declines to name. But it only takes 2 seconds to see the robot looks exactly like Scarlett Johansson. And ironically, who played a phone operating system named Samantha in the Oscar-nominated film Hair. So he has designed a robot of Scarlett Johansson. So the question is first, what do we think Ricky is going to be doing with that robot? Remember, this is a family show.
It rhymes with talk it.
Do we really believe that he's going to have sex with a robot?
I couldn't possibly comment. I believe he'll give it a bloody good go.
And then the obvious question is, you get a choice of Ricky to make a robot of your choosing. Who would you go for?
Natalie Portman.
I'm going to take Ricky Scarlett Johansson and say thank you very much. You don't need to build me a new robot.
Thing is, though, I think Scarlett Johansson would need to look like the Scarlett Johansson from The Winter Soldier.
Yeah, that's not necessarily an issue. That's not necessarily an issue. Do you know what though? Like, I'm watching it now, and like he's got a gif of her winking. It's sinister at best.
It's what it says. In the interest of fair play, when it says uncanny resemblance, it looks a bit like Scarlett Johansson and Keira Knightley mashed heads together.
What I will say is, if you keep scrolling down the article, it may look like it from the face, it doesn't look like it from the body.
Or the teeth.
Or the fact that she's got plastic feet.
Yeah. This is weird. I think this is too weird.
This has gone from weird to just random bizarre, and there's no surprise that we're in Far East Asia to go totally weirdly.
Yeah, and I also don't believe that this is the Mark 1.
To be fair, if that's the Mark 1, that guy knows his shizzle, like, because that is a really good robot.
Exactly. This is Mark 47 and he knows it.
Next story, Dutton. A cereal box full of cocaine. What a way to start your day. Two men were arrested Tuesday after the traffic stop led police in Florida, of course,
obviously,
to discover an unusual prize inside a packet of breakfast cereal. Police say Efren Zuniga, 19, and Jose Moreno, 24, had more than 500 grams of coke wrapped up in a cereal box. Authorities said they had to help them from a canine. Well, they had help from a dog, who sniffed out the breakfast of convicted champions after the suspects were pulled over for a faulty equipment violation. That's got to be one of those situations where you're like, guys, you're smuggling coke in cereal boxes, so can we please make sure all the headlights work on all the cars and you've got, like, all your tyres are fully pumped?
That is the one thing, if you're going to transport drugs with a very high street value, you don't want to be pulled up for a non-blinking tail light or slightly underinflated tyre. No, this is obviously why these people are peddling the drugs and aren't living high off the hog from the earnings.
I mean, the amount of cocaine has a street value of approximately 15 grand, which is a decent sum of cash. But maybe if you've done this before, as I said, you could buy a better car. How many times do people get, like, I got pulled over because I had a brake light and, I was so drunk that I couldn't walk straight?
Yeah, just, I picked the one day that my tail light broke to drink drive. Speaking of, talking about, cereal box, there is a brewer in Scotland, which is like Florida, I suppose. They've started making
as in it's got marmalade. Land and sea.
Yeah, they've made beer marmalade.
Beer marmalade?
Beer marmalade. It's an IPA marmalade.
That sounds horrible. So
it's called
beer on my toast?
Yeah. Beer Spalmabali.
That sounds horrific.
It's available to purchase online for just $14.19, whatever that is in pound. I'm not a fan of marmalade, but I certainly don't want IPA on my toast.
I don't really.
I like IPAs.
I don't really understand why you're thinking, do you know what I want with me toast? Beer. We're not, unless you're on a stag do in Germany, then I understand the logic, but I'm not sure I want it.
No.
I want it regular basis on my breakfast.
Yeah, I'm good.
All this breakfast banter, I'm starving. This is not good. This is not good. So,
well, you must be hungry with your midlife crisis.
So should we suggest what my midlife crisis was? That yesterday I took the kids trampoline and today I took them roller skating. I didn't do the trampoline, I did do the roller skating, and I didn't fall over once.
Yeah, the thing is, though, given your track record, the trampolining would have been the safer of the activities to do. Let them do the roller skating.
See, I hear what you're saying. It's like I love the irony of getting abuse from Dutton related to injuries. From the man who was permanently injured or ill. But I understand that I'm the only one with like a metal knot in my arm, so I can kind of understand the logic of why you can do that. It just makes me laugh regularly.
Yeah. And so as we say, because I'm always ill, I can fight through it. But when you get ill, you're on your arse. Yeah,
that's a dose of death. Do you know what I mean? I get the real man flu, not like that fake stuff that you see in the telly.
That's it.
So that was Weird World. Crazy Scarlett Johansson robot and guys with serial cocaine. So let's go to the first of our two interviews. And our first interview is with the brilliant Chris Wessling of the Around the NFL podcast and Around the NFL on NFL.com. He is our go-to GM of Common Sense, and he's going to answer a few questions related to passer rating, why the way punters kick, and the Washington professional football team done.
And we let him rant about the cat rule.
And of course we let him rant about the cat rule. So let's get straight to it. And joining us now in Waxing Lyrical of Mains and Dutch, a favourite of ours, one of the four horsemen of the NFL podcast world, and as we like to call him, the GM of Common Sense, Mr. Chris Wessling. How are we, Chris?
What an honor. I love that title. That would be what I'd like to be known as.
I think it's something that everyone should strive for, Chris. There is a lot of non-common sense, I'm not sure that's a word I've just made up there, about in the NFL, and I think sometimes we know that when we listen to you on Around the NFL, we get what we should be hearing from a lot of the higher ups, or as you would call them, shadowy league figures.
Yeah, common sense is my religion and my politics, so I don't have much power. I just get to spout about it on a podcast. I don't really have to deal with any of the repercussions like the shadowy league figures have to do.
I suppose having common sense as your politics and your religion in America at the moment is probably a bit of a, you're fighting a bit of a losing battle.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, let's move swiftly on, Dutton. Let's not get anyone in trouble here.
No.
So Chris, as we know, listen to you on the podcast, it's one of the quietest periods in the NFL at the moment, and we believe you've been reading Next Man Up. What did you think of the book? And are there any other books on the schedule for the next couple of weeks prior to the draft?
Yeah, I just finished Next Man Up about a week ago. I had kind of held off on it because John Feinstein is a good writer. I had just kind of soured on him for some unknown reason over the last 10, 15 years. I had read A Season on the Brink in the late 80s about the Indiana Hoosiers. He wrote that. It was a really good book, but somehow he seemed like a college sports golf kind of writer to me, so I didn't think his NFL book would be that good, but I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of good nuggets in there, and I think my favorite part was the draft war room for the Ravens was really interesting. The behind-the-scenes look that he gave for that. But just started reading Badasses, which is a book about the Oakland Raiders dynasty from the 70s and 80s. Al Davis and John Madden. So that's what I'm into right now. And I found quite a few interesting articles on Sports Illustrated's vault from Dr. Z, Paul Zimmerman, and Tex Small, who was the big editor in the 60s. I'm going to plow through those as well.
The Raiders book, Chris, intrigues me because for a lot of, I suppose, we quote unquote newer NFL UK viewers, the Raiders have always been, I'm trying to think of a polite word to say, garbage. But they're on their way back, and and for me, the league's always better when the Raiders are good. So does this book harken back to those Super Bowl winning teams of the Raiders pre-move to Los Angeles, I guess?
Yeah, I agree with you on that sentiment. The Raiders, to me, I identify with them as kind of an outlaw in the business, somebody who's taken a circuitous route and doesn't always follow the rules. And they were, their symbol is a pirate, and that's the way they've acted. With Al Davis as one of the biggest pirates in sports history. He might be the most dynamic person in the history of the NFL, in the history of professional football. So I think in that sense, he's always going to be an interesting subject. And John Madden is another classic character too. So they set the tone for those Raiders teams, which like you said, the NFL is better when they're good because there's no other team like them. There's no other philosophy like them.
One of the questions we usually ask, it's around the time that the NFL finally announced which team is going to be on Hard Knocks. How good would any season from the 1970 Raiders on Hard Knocks be? That would be compulsive viewing, surely.
It would be compulsive viewing, and it wouldn't be allowed to happen in today's corporate NFL. They would break too many rules, and everything would be politically incorrect.
Well, you're right. It'd probably be, that would be footage that would get locked away for a very, very long time.
Yeah, it would be fun though.
Oh yeah. I'd say you're the GM of common sense, the leading voice in one of the, if not the most ridiculous rule, then certainly in the top one in most professional sports, i.e. the catch rule. Just moving away from that for a second, just on another matter of common sense. Why don't punters kick the ball out of bounds?
Why don't punters kick the ball out of bounds?
Yeah. Well, it just seems that they're just. It's a tactic that's open to. It's just leaves them open to danger. Whereas from me, obviously the highly trained professional athlete that I'm not, why not just kick it out of bounds and have done with it?
I think because it's hard. That's the conclusion I've come to. Because one of the thoughts I had probably 15, 20 years ago was, why are punters not much better at the coffin corner? And the coffin corner is, basically hooking it out of bounds between the 10-yard line and the end zone. And I think the answer is just because it's really hard. You have to get enough distance and height on the ball and place it in a small spot. And I think maybe you sacrifice distance and height if you're going for out of bounds.
So I'm going to put forward the case for you, Chris. Being the GM of Common Sense, I know you, Mark, and Dan did the GM show. With your GM hat on, you guys need to get yourselves to the UK and watch some of our rugby guys, because in theory, that is actually a play they do 20 times a game. From the middle of the field, kick it out of bounds straight away. So maybe we need to get a few few NFL GMs on the show and get them some video packages of, I don't know, I'm going to remember a player's name, Johnny Wilkinson et al.
Are they able to do it consistently? Like put it exactly where they want consistently?
They are exceptional. Do some of them not go out of bounds? Yes, they don't. But the player would have to pick it up pretty much near the byline, on the 5 yard line.
So it's it's an idea that needs fleshing out, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just making this up. I wrote the question because I'm always intrigued by it. The especially with the back in the day, Chris, with the Devon Hesters in this world, and you were like, why are we punting to? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's a very good question. And even if it meant that you weren't as good at it, but you still got it out at, say, the 20-yard line, I'm not sure why you wouldn't do it rather than give it to Hester and give him a chance to return it.
Yeah, I think some of that is hubris and the relishing the challenge. I think NFL coaches and most people competing in a professional sport don't want to admit that the other guy's too big of a threat for their special teams.
Just the last question then, Chris. I wouldn't forgive myself or any of the the three people who actually listen to us if we didn't let you give vent to some feeling about the catch rule.
Yeah, I understand their thought process. Number one, that it's about player security and they don't want defensive backs teeing off on receivers. And number two, that it will increase the fumbles. And I think hogwash, okay, factor those things in, but that does not trump the fact that nobody knows what a catch is. The most basic element in the game, we have to use common sense. If your fans, players, coaches, and officials don't know what a catch is, the rule is broken, it must be fixed, and that has to be the number one priority, people understanding the rule.
Chris, we've discussed on our previous show on around the NFL about Washington, and I am a fan of them, and you were branded at part of the kissing cousins corner by Mr. Handers over the last season. But I know, and this was more of an attack on the rest of the NFC East, which you hate, and you should do, because they're on too much and they're not very good. As you rank the division last again, does that mean that I should give some thought to being in the playoffs again, although I will probably lose?
The Redskins should be in the playoffs, is that what you're
asking? Yeah. Do you think there's a chance that they are back in again, or with Romo back, is this Dallas's division to lose?
Well, I think there's a chance, but my stance, which I made repeatedly and which was ignored by Greg and Dan repeatedly, was that it wasn't about the Redskins having a good team or that Kirk Cousins being a good quarterback. It was about how bad the division was. And you can't rule out the Redskins, was my sentiment, when the rest of the division just stinks. So I think Kirk Cousins took advantage of a really easy schedule last year, and I think he's a better quarterback than most people believed, but I don't think he's a top 15 NFL quarterback. And I question whether that roster is a top 15 NFL roster too. So, in my opinion, you throw all four of those NFC East teams up for grabs, and they all have a 25% chance of winning.
So Chris, you did the middle of last week. You did the division rankings on the show. Did you pick the AFC North first? And if so, why?
I picked the AFC East first. It was a coin flip between about four different divisions. I think it's that close. I think it's a silly exercise to be doing in April in the first place. It's a silly exercise from the beginning. At its core, it's a silly exercise. But I give the Patriots, to me, are always number one until they prove otherwise. They're going to enter every offseason as the best team in the NFL, so they get extra points there. And I don't think there's any cupcake. As much as I don't like how the Dolphins approach their team building, I don't think they're a cupcake. The Jets and the Bills are teams that could get wild cards. So I saw the AFC East as the number one, but I could easily be convinced that it's the AFC North or the NFC North or the NFC West or the AFC West.
Do you do that a lot, Chris? When you get roles to do by Greg, who's in Japan now, and he wouldn't listen anyway, so you're fine to slag him off and just think, this is a bit foolish considering it's April or May or it's the start of the season and they're talking about what we're looking at from Super Bowl odds.
Well, I think most of the NFL offseason is foolish, but it's what keeps us in business too. So you have to balance that. I generally try to do as conscientious of a job as I can in balancing all of that. Even if I know an exercise is silly, I try to make it a little less silly. I try to put effort into it. But it's not like I was protesting the exercise. I honestly don't believe there's any separation between the 5 toughest divisions or the 6 toughest divisions. They're as close as they've ever been.
I think the NFL as well, it's different from a lot of the other sports, especially the ones that I watch, in the sense that so much of the time in the calendar is actually devoted to the NFL not being played. Whereas it's 17, 20 weeks a year, whereas like the English Premier League, for example, that goes on for 9, 10 months a year. So situations like this, an awful lot of the NFL, as you say, the off season, an awful lot of it is conjecture and projection and guesswork, basically.
Yeah, that's how it's built in. And I was talking to a girl last night about this because she had asked me why I'm writing about Colin Kaepernick in April, and I said, look, there's no off season. You go from the Super Bowl to a week or two later, you're at the NFL Combine. GMs and coaches are speaking there, generating quotes. People around the world want to read those quotes. They want to hear about updates on their team. 2 weeks later, free agency starts, and it's our busiest time of year, really. Then after that, the owners meeting. They're changing rules. They're talking about changing rules. Again, coaches and GMs are speaking, generating quotes about their players and speculation about who's coming to their team. People eat that stuff up. Now we're in the mock draft period and the pre-draft rumors. End of the month we'll be in the draft. And then after that, you've got mini camps and OTAs. Then you've got a rest season. There's a season for everything, and the NFL has set it up with all these tentpole events to make sure they're in the news. And honestly, the NFL draft, in which no games are being played, will draw more viewers than the NBA playoffs, which are the most important games of the year. So the NFL really has a stranglehold in America on the sports.
I think it was Dave Damashek was saying the other week on his podcast that he did his projections, as he calls them, for next season, and so he's saying that these teams are going to get the playoffs, and someone whose Twitter handle said that they loved love, life, and peace, and was a Buddhist or whatnot, said that basically he needed to be fired for expressing his opinion. It does seem to be an odd thing that so many fans do get so upset by someone's opinion for games that haven't even been played yet.
That's what the block button is for on Twitter. I mean, yeah, I understand that the word fan comes from fanatical, so that's the nature of the beast. But if you're unable to use common sense or to put your fanaticism aside and hear an intelligent debate or partake in intelligent conversation, then to me, you don't belong in my life and life's too short for you. That's the way I look at it.
You shared a stat yesterday about NFL passer rating regarding like the average being like around the early 90s when acknowledged greats like Joe Montana and Steve Young only averaged a tick over that. Is that a stark admission that the NFL as a league has just changed completely over the last 10, 15 years?
Yeah, I think I had a couple of takeaways from that. One, it has changed completely. The rules, they're fierce. And going back to the 70s, they got rid of bump and run coverage. Receivers can release off the line. I think it's just a lot easier to be a quarterback and a wide receiver now than it was even in the 80s and early 90s, much less the 60s and 70s. So I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is that plays are called differently now. Offensive philosophy is much different. The passes are easier. There's a lot more bubble screens. There's a lot more plants and crossing routes and a lot fewer downfield strikes, which led to a lot of interceptions in the 70s and 80s. So I think that's why you see higher completion percentages now and much higher passer ratings. Probably it says more about passer rating as a stat than anything.
Is there a danger? I mean, speaking for myself and I think Paul as well, we're not big fans of basketball because there's so many points. It can become a bit jaded. Do we run the risk of, as we go on, that the NFL could almost become like the Arena League and we could have games, every week, 42-38, and essentially defense is just forgotten?
I think that's a fair question. I look at it with the same approach because I love basketball. I think it's great. It bothers me. I defense in basketball, but I realize you guys are coming from a part of the world where soccer is kind of held up as a religion, and you score a goal like once every 3 weeks, so I understand that. But I don't think that there's a worry about that in football. I think defense will always be a part of it.
Obviously, we saw.
Go on, John.
Sorry, mate. We saw, the Super Bowl, how good a good game plan from a great defensive coach can stymie a great offense. So you'd hope that even with every innovation that comes in with offense, we've had the spread, we've had the pistol. Defensive coordinators are allowed to be creative and come up with ways to beat it as well. So I suppose that's always in football's future.
Yeah, I think that's been the history of football. There are always cycles, and once one side of the ball gets too far ahead, the other side catches up. And honestly, that's how the innovation happens. That's what's so great about the sport.
So, Chris, final question before we let you go. Everyone's favourite 7 and 9 team has moved just round the corner from yourself in Los Angeles, and they've started well. They wish both LA teams in baseball good luck today. Yesterday, opening day. Shocked me a little bit. Like there was, I got it through a guy who's from St. Louis, so he kind of was giving it the finger. It also seems to forget the fact that one of the LA teams doesn't play in LA, it plays in Anaheim. But anyway, I'm interested in, have they started the PR Los Angeles machine, the Rams themselves? Are people starting to notice billboards, adverts on TV, on radio about the Rams?
I would say that there are billboards here. I might be the wrong person to ask because I haven't watched television in 3 years, and I don't think I've listened to the radio in 10 years. I listen to podcasts and Spotify for whatever I want to, and then I'd rather read a book than watch TV. So I have no idea what people are talking about on the radio and television. I do think it will take a little bit before the city is really whipped into a frenzy, though.
With the fact that they are going to play in I'm going to be polite and say an older style stadium, do you think the people of LA may stay away, or do you expect it to be sold out?
I think there are 94,000 seats in there, or something like that. So I don't know if it will sell out, and I don't know if they'll cover up some of the seats to make it seem like a sellout. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't have a good enough read on this city. I thought before teams move here that it was kind of a college football city, and frankly, on Sundays, most of the people from LA are from other American cities or other cities in the world, and they have their own NFL teams. There are Eagles bars and Packers bars and Steelers bars. I wasn't convinced that they needed a team here, so I'll be as interested as you guys to find out whether it's going to work or not.
It's that kind of idea. I always think that when Cleveland lost their team and then got it back, and they've been rubbish ever since. They always seem to sell out the stadium, but there's so many. It seems I've never been to LA, but it seems there's a million different things to do. And if my team's not very good, ironically they've got the Rams who aren't very good. I'm not sure I'd go when I could do lots of other things when it's 75 and sunny. Although, as you mentioned off air, it's only 65 today.
Yeah, I think you have a good read on it, and maybe I don't know if I was a casual football fan and it was 80 degrees, I could just go to the beach. I don't know if I'd rather go to an old stadium and watch a team with Case Keenum at quarterback. I just don't know if I'd want to do that, but I think maybe the novelty of it will sell at first and get them through a couple of years, and then after that, the new stadium, which they're billing as the best stadium in the world, might sell it even better. So I think it'll work. It's the NFL. The appetite for it is ravenous around the country and starting to be in different parts of the world too. So I think it will be a success just because it's an NFL entity.
I think to borrow a phrase from one of our great football managers, I'll just paraphrase it. If there was an NFL game at the bottom of my garden and Case Keenum was quarterbacking it, I'd shut the curtains.
Yeah.
So, Chris, as always, we appreciate your time. We will let you get back to Spotify or reading or obviously work.
Well, we're about to start the podcast in a little bit.
Oh, well, enjoy, and we look forward to listening to it.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Wes.
Well done. That was the brilliant and always entertaining Chris Wessling there.
It's always an absolute pleasure to speak to Wes. So you can't argue with what he says, about like the Raiders, and he's one of those people whose opinions on the history of football you just have to take seriously.
It is done, and it's one. And I know Chris mentioned that he's going to SI Vault, to go through some articles. But if you want to look at some long form stuff, you really do need to check out Chris's articles on the Houston Oilers and the basically the start of the West Coast offense, which was the Ohio River offense. Both magnificent articles and really interesting and entertaining stuff, and give you some insight into the history of the NFL.
Absolutely.
So, and as we will be starting our campaign to get Chris to be the GM, get Chris to be the new Roger Goodell, we hope that you will follow us too.
Do it.
Dutton, let's just get straight on with the next interview. NFL heavy podcast this week, and now we've got Eric Galko from Optimum Scouting, and he's going to talk us through his mock drafts and what he sees going forward for the draft coming up in a few short weeks.
Absolutely.
So join us now on Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. It's Eric Galko. Eric works for Optimum Scouting, a brilliant website, optimumscouting.com, and is going to be our draft expert for the day, and is going to help us through the muddy waters of college prospects and which teams are going to pick who. How are we, Eric?
We're doing well. We're about 25 days away from the NFL draft, and I'm excited for it to finally come.
Eric, quick question before we start. I mean, this is now become a 365-day job. I assume you just permanently watching tape, look by almost as soon as the draft will finish this year, you'll be straight into 2017.
Yeah, well, it's a year-round process for a lot of people. People forget that there's a lot of kind of keys to this cog. There's the player aspect, the players getting ready. There's the agent aspect. We work with agents in our company to help them kind of find which players are the best guys, the sleeper guys to represent next year. We work with NFL teams and CFL, Canadian football teams, and arena football teams, and kind of find out which guys may fall through the cracks. Work with college football all-star games, players there too. So for us in my company, it's a year-round job, but certainly the process. It's you can never watch enough film. You can never think of enough things on a guy. You can never kind of fine-tune your report enough. So certainly by the end of May, we'll be as of 2017 for sure.
So Eric, you've written a brilliant article on the Optimum Scouting website where you have picked what you would do as a GM, which I think is a really interesting concept. I know, and to be honest, some of the players you picked, I like the concept, and we'll get onto that a bit later. But with the Browns, you've got them picking Jalen Ramsey, who's the defensive back / safety, rather than the quarterback. Can you talk us through the logic of why you would do that if you were the Browns?
Yeah, I think if you've won, there's not a quarterback in this class worth a first-round pick, and that kind of gets thrown around a lot. But what that means is that there's no one in this class that I can both trust to start day one and or be a guy who can make his teammates better consistently. The only one that gets close to that, and we almost gave a first-round grade in our draft guide, but we didn't, was Paxton Lynch of Memphis for us. So I think Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, the two guys often thrown around to be top 10 picks, in my mind, aren't worth taking that high because of the expectations that come with it, because of the assumed responsibility they'll have to have when they get there. A lot of just taking a guy in the top 10. So I think for that reason, and also because there's 5 or 6 really special players in this draft class. Remy Tunsil atop the draft, Jalen Ramsey, who you mentioned, Miles, UCLA, DeForest Buckner of Oregon, Joey Bosa of Ohio State, Ezekiel of Ohio State. And I say them by name because these 6 players, I think, are 6 of the top 20, 25 draft prospects in the last couple of years. And I think for a team to take a quarterback over those guys, it would take an awfully impressive quarterback to pass on a guy who might change your offensive line or your defense. And I don't think any of these quarterbacks are worth that. So if I'm the Cleveland Browns, as a long answer, I would say.
Okay, Cheers, Eric.
Eric, you've got, as you said, you mentioned there, you have Paxton Lynch as your top quarterback in the draft. Is there anything particular that you like about Lynch more than the Carson Wentz's and Jared Goffs of this world?
His intuition. I think he's intuitively the smartest quarterback in this class, and kind of like what does quarterback smarts mean is always a big topic of discussion. And how smart is a quarterback? How well can he adapt? But for me, being an intuitive quarterback is so important. And you look at Paxton. I've looked at Paxton Lynch on film, and it happened. I believe it was the Tulsa game of this past year, and it happened again in the Ole Miss game too. He's a guy he's a see it, throw it guy. He's got enough confidence in his ball placement, enough confidence in what he's seeing, and understands when to take chances and when not to. I think Jared Goff can do that a little bit, but he's kind of confined to a system. I think Carson Wentz is way behind the eight ball and having a lot of confidence within the system. Paxton Lynch ran an offense that wasn't a great testament of what he can do in the NFL. Very similar to what Derek Carr ran at Fresno State the year prior, and he's adjusted well in the NFL. But I think what Paxton Lynch does most impressively is that when things don't go right, even post-snap, and there's a handful of plays in that Ole Miss game that you could see immediately things didn't go according to plan in the play design, and he still made the throw that made the most sense, and that didn't force turnovers, didn't lead his team into bad situations, and gave his guys a chance to make plays after the catch. I think when you throw Paxton in any college offense, in any NFL offense, he can figure it out quicker than Jared Goff or Carson Wentz can. So why Carson Wentz may be better than Paxton Lynch in a vertical passing offense in time, Jared Goff may be better in a very anticipation-based offense like the Green Bay Packers run. But I think across a lot of offenses, Paxton Lynch can do more with less, can make his teammates better quicker, and can be a guy you can really build around as an NFL quarterback and trust him to make plays when things aren't going according to plan.
Is there? I mean, it did seem to come across, especially after the combine, that he himself gave off the impression that he could benefit from maybe sitting behind a veteran. Do you think that's actually to his advantage because he's coming into the league acknowledging that he still has ways to go, rather than, I'm not naming any names, I'm not assuming this happens, that some players maybe get to the NFL and just assume they know it all?
Yeah, I mean, every quarterback would love to sit, and every team would love to sit their guys, but there's different types of players. Jameis Winston, for example, and Cam Newton before him, were guys that need to learn as they play. Some guys are different learners. Some guys learn by seeing. Some guys learn by practicing. Other guys learn by trial, by example. It takes a special guy to do that. To go into an NFL season and lose more plays than you're going to win is hard for a lot of guys to stomach and can hurt their impact. And for guys like Jameis Winston or Cam Newton, or in my mind, I think Paxton Lynch can do that, can overcome that, stay positive, can stay confident. Confidence is a huge aspect of playing quarterback. It's all about instilling confidence. So I think for Jared Goff, he'll need time away from that college system. I think Carson Wentz is a guy that I don't know if I can trust his confidence based off what he's done in his college career so far. He's got a long way to go yet. I think Paxton Lynch can certainly benefit. I mean, his footwork's going to be a lot of reworking. His mechanics aren't always great. I think he kind of wastes a lot of the arm talent he has and can certainly improve mechanically there. But in terms of dealing with NFL offense, sure, there'll be adjustments. I think if they had to, he could start day one for an NFL team like the St. Louis Rams, or I guess Los Angeles Rams as they are now, and make an impact and kind of learn on the fly. So while every quarterback should welcome the opportunity to sit for a little bit and not be playing and forced to make mistakes, some guys have the confidence to deal with that and keep getting better. I think Paxton Lynch is one of those guys.
On the quarterbacks, Eric, how big an issue is for Lynch and to more extent Carson Wentz the level of competition they played under? I mean, I know Memphis are a D1 school, but they're not in one of the Power 5 conferences, so to speak, and obviously Carson Wentz was in D2. Do you guys just focus on what you see on the film and not really take into account the opposition that they're playing against?
No, I think it's relative. And I talked to a scout a while back about, quarterback wins and this idea of you shouldn't use it or should you use it. Sometimes a quarterback managing an offense, the things we don't see can be quantified into the wins aspect. And sometimes we say, quarterback wins are too important and we give guys too much credit for winning games. Sometimes quarterback wins means a lot. And guys who don't win games, there's small things happening behind the scenes or in the huddle that are leading to that, or there's big things happening on the field that are leading to that. So I think in terms of, level of competition, that's a whole different issue that you have to kind of really dig deep in terms of, at least for quarterbacks, what were they asked to do? Some quarterbacks at the FCS level, the D2 level, are asked to do a lot. pre-snap, some aren't. I think Carson Wentz is one of the guys that won a whole lot. He was given more than most, but by comparison, I think he's probably on the same level a lot of those guys. But I think a lot of competition in terms of what he's seen, what he's been asked to do, how he's asked to take chances is a little bit different than those guys. But I think overall, level of competition, needing for development based on the college offense, it gets a bit overblown. And I think smart teams know guys, they draft these guys and know where they have to be mentally and schematically to make a difference in the NFL.
Cards on the table here, Eric. I'm a big Washington fan, and the draft that you've done here fills me with a lot of joy. Josh Doctson from TCU and Andrew Billings from Baylor. First question is there any way we can send this over to Scott McCloughan and he can make it happen? And secondly, can you give the audience an insight into what you think of Josh Doctson and what you project in terms of being an NFL receiver?
Yeah, I think both those guys are actually real possibilities for the Redskins. And Scott McCloughan, their GM, did exactly what I think a lot of people expected him to do last year. He's going to draft safe. And in the first round, he took a guard at 5th overall and ended up being a good pick. I think Sheriff's a great player, and a couple of guys picked after him haven't worked out as well yet. I was just 1 year in, but I think that's what he's going to want to do early on in the draft. And the best way to succeed in the draft is you got to hit on 4 of your 7 draft picks. And by taking a relatively safe lineman in round 1, odds are you'll get an NFL player out of that for the long term. So I like to see him do at defensive lineman this year. Defensive tackle is a big need. I think Billings makes a lot of sense. But you mentioned Doctson. First off, for the Redskins, Deshaun Jackson's contract is going until 2017, but it's easily cuttable in 2016. And he's getting up there in years. And Pierre Garcel's contract runs out after this year. So they could have the 2 best receivers moving forward for Kirk Cousins, and receiver makes sense in the first round. They're going to be right in the sweet spot there and maybe have their pick of any receivers in the class, what I've been told recently. So with that said, I think Doctson has been a bit overblown. I think the reason scouts might be a little overcautious on him is because Aaron Dobson of Marshall Compact hasn't succeeded in the NFL, and they're somewhat similar players. I think Doxson's a better athlete, a better vertical threat, but guys who can make really impressive catches are always attractive to people on the outside. But how do these guys get separation? How can they work in these shorter routes? The NFL team's running a lot more. Those are 2 big questions, I think, with Doctson and how he'll fit there. But there's definitely a home for him as a number 2 receiver. As far as being 21, I think it may be worthwhile. I think Laquan Treadwell is the only guy that's worth a number 1 receiver type draft grade in this class. Everyone else is kind of being a number 2 receiver, still picking the 20s. But I think overall Doctson has remarkable concentration, remarkable hands, can really be a quarterback's best friend, but he's not going to be a fit for all teams. He's not going to be a guy I think you could trust, at least early on, until he kind of develops a nuance of route running to be a number 1 receiver in the NFL.
Obviously, one of the most controversial positions in terms of first-round talent over the last 5, maybe 10 years is running back. And obviously, in your mock draft, you have Ezekiel Elliott going at number 7. What is it about Elliott that you think is so special to warrant a team taking him that high, given the recent past of, I was going to say dubious picks, but I'll just say Trent Richardson?
Yeah, he certainly set the stage for teams not trusting running backs early on. But I think Elliott for 2 reasons. One, I think it's his balance to explosiveness kind of ratio. He's a guy who can kind of work laterally in zone runs and kind of keep his vision, keep his steps, and then hit that top speed very, very quickly for a bigger running back. And he is a 6 foot, 220-pound running back when he's all built up. He's that kind of guy where you can kind of trust him to take his time and be patient because he knows he can break tackles, and especially he knows he can explode once he sees an open field run. So I think that type of explosiveness and that balance he has in the lead up there is unique to him. Not a lot of guys can kind of play under control and work laterally and not use their full speed and then get that top gear as quickly as he can. But I think secondly, and maybe more importantly, it's just how versatile he is. He's a remarkable pass catcher. He's a confident route runner. He's an experienced and adequate pass blocker. Even did some run blocking for Cardell Jones and JT Barrett this year. He's been in all 4 areas as a blocker or a receiver, and that's so rare for a running back. So I think at the very least, you're getting a do-it-all 3-down running back who, if he can stay healthy, is going to be a 900 to 1,100-yard running back in the NFL, which may be tough to come by. And at best, he might be the Rookie of the Year candidate and maybe the Rookie of the Year lock, depending on where he ends up. So I think the top 10 is not too rich for Ezekiel Elliott. I think the Giants at 10 would be crazy to pass on him if he falls there. The Dolphins at 13, obviously, as well. But I think he ends up going maybe 7 to the 49ers, maybe 8 to the to the Eagles. Maybe the Dolphins trip to 9 to get him like that. But I think there'll be plenty of suitors in that 7 to 13 range.
Final question from us before we let you go, and it's one of them standard ones that we always ask. You can pick anyone in the draft who you think we'll be talking about in 2, 3, 4, 5 years as a star in the NFL. Who is that guy?
I should have this question ready. I get it all the time, but I'll say two guys. One is a guy who's going to be a first round pick, and I think he's starting to get some buzz, but teams I talk to are really, really excited about him, and that's Darren Lee of Ohio State, the linebacker. I think there's a real chance he goes even top 10, maybe top 13 seems likely. But just a remarkably explosive lateral athlete for a linebacker. He has a ton of tools to work with. Still pretty raw, but to be honest, I think if he stayed in school for all 4 years, he might be on a level of prospect as Jalen Smith of Notre Dame. It's aggressive to say, but similar type of explosiveness, similar type range, and Lee's still improving in terms of kind of reading and reacting. You kind of give him a year to kind of get himself settled. I think by his second year, he'll be one of the best young linebackers in football. Second guy is Braxton Miller of Ohio State, the former quarterback turned receiver. Just what he's done in terms of going from a position he's played his whole life at quarterback, in 9 months being one of the draft's best receivers. He's developed so much as a route runner, as an after-catch guy, as a confident player in a position he's so new in. I spoke with him as well. An unbelievable interview, an unbelievably mature young man. He's probably the most impressive interview I've ever had, maybe after Russell Wilson, but on the same level of guys that their demeanor and their professionalism is far at the next level. I think he's a Randall Cobb-type player, maybe even more, based on how quickly he's developed. So I'd say the two Buckeyes, Darren Lee and Braxton Miller, are two guys I'm pretty bullish on moving forward.
Could the change of position for him be a chip on his shoulder that helps him in his NFL career?
That's a good question. And speaking with him, I asked him at the Senior Bowl, I said, hey, where do you think you'd be if you were a quarterback here? And he said, basically, I'm the best one. He knows he's one of the best quarterbacks in this draft class. And to be honest, I think Carson Wentz's hype has gotten a little out of control. I think Wentz would be a better quarterback prospect than Braxton Miller, but Miller's not that far off, and he was a really impressive quarterback. If he had stayed healthy, he might have been a third pick as a quarterback, especially with Russell Wilson's development. But I think the chip on his shoulder is not that he was overlooked. I think his motivation is more so that he knows his best position as a receiver. He's a very family-oriented person. He has a son that he wants to take care of, and that was a big reason why he changed positions. He could have stayed a quarterback. He could have kind of just been the backup this year, maybe even played based on how Cardell Jones struggled and, got a chance to be a quarterback. But he told me blatantly, hey, I have a son to take care of. I have a family to take care of. And I know NFL teams are going to like me more at receiver because of all I can do there. And that's why I went there. And I'm going to take this 100% serious because I know this is where the best chance of me to be a professional is going to be. I think that kind of motivation for himself is all he really needs. So, like I said, there hasn't been a more professional appearance-wise and attitude-wise and confidence-wise and work ethic-wise as I've ever met in Braxton Miller. The only comparable guy is Russell Wilson, and certainly we've seen how that turns out and his demeanor in the NFL. So like I said, I think there's a lot of reasons to have a chip on his shoulder. I don't think change position is one of them, but I think that kind of brashness and confidence in a good way is going to make him a really successful NFL receiver.
Just quickly, last thing, Eric, that's a lot of Buckeyes you've mentioned, and I believe this is the first class to come out from Urban Meyer's original recruiting class. Should we be expecting this a lot going forward like we did from Florida?
Yeah, I think so. And kind of the bigger question, too, is how long will he be here? At Florida, it kind of ended at some point, whether it was because of Tim Tebow or because he was, quote-unquote, burnt out, I'm not sure. But, it's difficult to kind of manage these guys. And, behind the scenes, like it was at Florida, things aren't always kosher. Guys are going to get into trouble. Again, like it was happening in Florida, guys are having a bit of a wide range to do things. Like at Florida, just at Ohio State, including some of the top Ohio State prospects. So the question I think is how long will it last? I think there's almost no question he's going to keep getting these top players. He's already getting them more and more. I mean, Darren Lee was there for a year and a half, 2 years, and he's already going to be a first-round pick. So there's definitely talent out there that Urban Meyer can grab, but the question is kind of how long is he going to want to do it? It's a lot of work getting all these top prospects in line, and he does a pretty good job in general. But I think for the near future, maybe next year's class might be a little weaker than usual because he's having, might have as many as 10 guys drafted this year. But I think overall, Urban Meyer's not going to be short of talent moving forward, even with Jim Harbaugh moving moving in upstairs in Michigan.
Well, Eric, brilliant, and thank you for your time tonight. And before we let you go, where can people get the scouting guide?
Yeah, our NFL draft guide is you can purchase it on OptimumScouting.com. It's at the top banner. You'll see a link to purchase it for, and you click the buy now button, and you'll get it within 24 hours via email and via link. But we're really excited about it. It's got almost 300 players scouting reports in there. 4 reports that you'll see are professionally done, modeled after NFL scouting reports. 4 analytics sections, big board, small school rankings, endorsements from NFL executives, the works. So a lot of cool stuff in there, and hopefully you can enjoy it. Hopefully it's all you need for the draft process.
Dutton is already halfway through. I believe I've just started, so we highly recommend it. It's for draftniks everywhere.
Yeah, my family, I've pretty much they can wait till May. My family, I'm busy.
I know how that is, man. I know how that is, and it was a lot of work to put together, but it's gotten good feedback, and I appreciate the kind of words you said too. But talking to people like yourself and other radio shows and fans, NFL teams, it's a lot of work to put together, sleepless nights, and I'm glad it's kind of getting some good buzz. A lot of great people worked on it.
Cool. Well, we will keep on spreading the word, Eric, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Well done. That was the brilliant Eric Galko there talking us through all things draft. And can you believe it? A Washington question and no Philadelphia question. It looks like I must have wrote the questions this week.
Must have done. Can't imagine why you think to ask any Eagles things.
Although he had your Ezekiel Elliott not going to yourself, but then did hype up Darren Lee, who he has put in his draft, going to you. So there you go, Dutton. He's already thinking of you.
What a guy!
What a guy! You loving that draft?
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic! It's the third year in a row I've bought it. It's for a way of introducing yourself to these players. It's great to refer back, on draft night or the second day, the third day. You see these players, you hear the names, you just go in, you see what they've said about it, and straight away you go, oh, we've got a dud.
Yeah, which is what happens. So Dutton, that is the end of a very, very busy show. We've done Weird World, we spoke to Chris, and we spoke to Eric. We've also announced our partnership with DraftKings. Don't forget, you too can win a share of $4 million playing 1 week fancy golf this week. 6 players.
Why wouldn't you want to?
Pick a team. First place wins $1 million. Can't recommend it enough. If you want to find a link to DraftKings, if you go to the Waxing Lyrical Twitter handle, so it's at Waxing Lyrical. If you go to the homepage, there's a link in there. And me and Dutton have already tweeted out the link as well. Get involved. Get your golf team in and watch Spring with the Masters coverage.
Absolutely.
This has been Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Dutch. Get used to it.